My mom says that you're dangerous. And I was in second grade when we were having this conversation, and I was like, how dangerous can a second grader even be? I think I was just like, man, maybe there's something wrong with me. Like maybe I'm broken or something. And that's a really heavy thought to have in second grade. And I kind of started to think like, well, if that's true, then I just shouldn't be here anymore. Like everyone would be better off if I wasn't here. Zach showed up and I realized, oh, it actually only takes like one person. It takes one person to make you feel like you're going to be okay.
Well, hello, my friends, and welcome to the Live Inspired podcast with John O'Leary. We are in for a wild journey today. Get ready to buckle up. Here we go, my friends. Clothier, t-shirt manufacturer, international designer, speaker, artist, builder. What do all these things have in common? I don't really have any idea other than the fact that somehow our guest today embodies and emboldens all of them. His name is Kyle Scheele. I met him on stage a couple years ago, met him again 2 weeks ago as we shared the same stage down in Dallas. His message, his life, his stories are beautiful. And today, as you get to know him, his heart, and his stories, you're going to recognize why I'm so excited to share my friend with you today. So, my friends, if you've ever wanted to become a little bit more creative, a little bit more bold, a little bit more vibrant, a little bit more impactful in your life, then there's something in Kyle's life story that is for you. So let me be quiet. Let me bring him on. He is my friend. He's about to be yours. His name is Kyle Scheele. Kyle Scheele, welcome to Live Inspired with John O'Leary.
Excited to be here.
For those who somehow skipped over my introduction of you and they missed the red carpet I rolled out, if you had to introduce yourself to them, what would you say?
Oh man, that's always tough. Whenever someone asks me what I do, I always say, how much time do you have? And the short answer is I'm a speaker, but I'm an author, and then I'm a content creator, and I'm a dad, I'm a husband, and I make weird stuff for the internet. And all of that somehow kind of ties together into a life and a living.
And at that point, they either run away from your studio and from you, or they say, now, how do I get there, man? Because I want to learn more about it. So the folks who are still listening to us and watching us, they want to learn more about your studio and your art and your books and your talks and your kids and your wife and your life. So I'm going to move you back a little bit, about almost 40 years, May 10th, 1986. We're outside of Rogersville, Missouri. There is a brilliant, genius little baby born. And down the hall is born Kyle Scheele. So I want you to introduce this. What was your childhood like, man? Just start at the earliest days. What was your dad like growing up?
So my dad worked in a factory most of my life. He worked in a styrofoam cup factory. So they made styrofoam cups for gas stations and restaurants and things like that. And two interesting things that came out of that. One was that my dad always smelled like melting plastic. So even to this day, like if somebody accidentally throws plastic into a fire and I smell that, that's like a comfort smell for me.
Wow.
Which is just an interesting thing because I just go, oh, that's dad. That smells like my dad. And then the other thing was that taught me that everything is made somewhere. And so when I was a kid, we would go on road trips and my dad would, we'd be at a gas station and he would pick a cup up from just the fountain drink or whatever. And he would look at the bottom of it and he could tell from the markings and the numbers and stuff on the bottom. He'd go, oh, this was made in Augusta. I know those guys. And so I was just always fascinated by like, oh, somebody goes to work to make that thing. And so I think that kind of inspired this curiosity in me about like, where does all this stuff come from? Like anytime I would see some weird thing, I have this coffee mug that has boots on the bottom of it. I'm like, somebody made this. Like somebody goes to work every day. Somebody's trying to pick up a girl in a bar and they go, hey, what do you do for a living? He goes, oh, those coffee mugs with boots on them? I make those. And my mom was a nurse. My mom, from the time she was a little girl, knew that she wanted to be a nurse, went to nursing school, was a nurse her whole life, and then retired, just kind of rare. That was my childhood. I'm in the middle of three boys. An older brother and younger brother. We're all 2 years apart. Grew up running through the woods and building forts out of sticks and stuff.
So I understand that, yeah, your brothers were awesome. Your parents were awesome, but you struggled a little bit in grade school. Would you share about that?
Yeah, so growing up, I went to this very small private school. It was at a church. And so some of the people went there because it was like a church school. And then a lot of people just went there because it was a private school. Very well behaved kids. And it was, kind of a yes, ma'am, no, sir sort of a place. And I just didn't fit well into that environment. I was always bouncing off the walls, probably have ADHD. And I was just bored in school a lot. I'm a fast learner. And so they would teach you something and I'd go, yeah, yeah, I get it. Let's go on to the next thing. And then they'd be still teaching the other kids. And so I just got into trouble all the time and never for anything. I've never been in a fight. I wasn't like vandalizing things. It was just talking. It was just Kyle's a distraction. That happened, I mean, kindergarten, first, second grade, and all I really wanted was to just kind of make a friend. Like, I just want a best friend. That's all I wanted. And because of I was getting in trouble all the time, like I think some of the parents saw me as like, oh, this kid's he's risky. And so I remember I had this one kid named Willie that would come over to my house all the time, and we'd have a great time and go riding bikes and running through the woods and stuff. But then he'd go back home and he wouldn't have me over to his house. And so this kind of kept repeating itself for like several years. And finally, one day I was like, hey, man, like, let's talk. I was like, I noticed this discrepancy. And according to my records, I've had you over a lot of times and you've had me over approximately 0 times. Why is that? And he goes, oh, I want to have you over, but I can't. And I was like, oh, you just like can't have people over. Like, I thought it was me. And he was like, no, it is you. I can have people over. I just can't have you over specifically. And I was like, well, why can't you have me over? And he goes, my mom says that you're dangerous. And I was in second grade when we were having this conversation. And I was like, how dangerous can a second grader even be? That really wrecked me because I remember thinking like, man, I'm just a kid. Like, I'm just trying to be loved like anybody else. I just want a friend here. And here's an adult telling their kid like, hey, that kid's dangerous. Watch out for him. And I kind of just internalized that. And I think I was just like, man, maybe there's something wrong with me. Like maybe I'm broken or something. Before that, I had always been just begging to go to a public school because I was just like, this school is so small and I just want to meet other kids. And after that, I kind of started to think maybe the problem isn't the school. Like maybe I'm the problem. Maybe there's something fundamentally wrong with me and I'm never going to find a friend. Maybe like I'm just not that kind of person. And that's a really heavy thought to have in second grade. And I kind of started to think like, well, if that's true, then I just shouldn't be here anymore. Like everyone would be better off if I wasn't here. And so, yeah, in like second and third grade, I was like thinking about killing myself and wondering like, how would you pull that off? And then fourth grade
I don't.
came.
But before you go on, man, like, are you telling this to anybody? Does anyone on the outside or the inside of your home have any idea that this little guy is struggling like this?
I don't think so. No. I mean, like the first time I ever told my parents this was years and years and years later. I remember like every night before bed, my mom would sit there with me and pray for God to send me a friend. She knew that I was lonely and she knew that I was struggling, but I don't think she really knew what to do with that. And she didn't know that I was like in that kind of a place. And people have always asked me in the past, like, because I'm funny on stage, and they go, "Oh man, I want to be funny like you. How do you get funny?" And I go, "Oh, be a fat shy kid." And that's how you develop that. And that was me. I was this kind of pudgy kid who didn't have friends. And so I developed humor as this defense mechanism. And so like at school, everybody thought, oh, this kid's like so happy and so fun. But that was me trying to like make up for not feeling that way inside.
Don't you think that's common with many comics?
Yeah. Oh, for sure. In
Whether
fact,
they're on
it's
stage in front of millions or on stage in front of 11 in their class.
yeah, and there's so many people who resist going to therapy or working through any of their stuff because they're like, what if this makes me not funny anymore? And that's the thing that I that I make my money off of, or that's kind of how I built my identity around. And so yeah, that's a huge thing where humor comes from.
So let's talk about this prayer that your mom was asking for. Praying that someone comes into our life and a little friend for my little Kyle, and eventually God does send someone in the form of a little boy named Zach. And I'm just curious, like, how did having some other kid who saw you, who knew you, who loved you, who played with you, who hung with you, change how you felt about yourself?
Yeah, so Zach showed up in fourth grade, and like just right away, I knew like, oh, this is going to be my guy because Zach was like me, and I think I wanted like any of the kids that were saying, hey, you can't come over to our house. What I was hoping was one day they would be like, you know what, you can come over and sort of like let me in. Whereas Zach was just like, we were naturally going to be friends. It wasn't like he was doing me a favor or something. Zach was like me. He was witty and sarcastic, and he didn't have a filter between his brain and his mouth. So, when I tell this story on stage, I say like before Zach got there, it was always like Kyle out in the hall. But then when Zach got there, everything changed because now it was like Zach, Kyle out in the hall. And so we both got to be out there.
Batman,
And
Robin, both of you.
yeah, get out of here. And so Zach and I just hit it off. And within a few weeks of meeting him, he was like, hey, do you want to come over to my house sometime? And it was just like the most natural, casual thing in the world for him. And inside, I'm like, oh my gosh, this is it. Don't show him that you've never wanted anything more than this. And I remember going to his house and being kind of like, okay, I got to be on my best behavior because I've been told, I'm dangerous and you're not, you don't belong here and all this stuff. And Zach's family, like they didn't treat me like I was some dangerous kid. They didn't treat me like I was just one of Zach's friends. Like Zach's family treated me like I was Zach's family. And so I was for a long time, like fourth through eighth grade. Zach and I were inseparable. And I went on family vacations with him. If I wasn't at his house, he was at my house. One of the things that I learned from that, I think before that, I thought, man, part of why I was in such a dark place was because I thought for my life to get better, pretty much everything is going to have to change. Like all of these kids are going to have to leave and be replaced with kids who click with me. I've never met one kid like that. And then all the teachers are going to have to leave and be replaced with teachers who really enjoy it when a student is a giant distraction to the learning environment. And that also seems unlikely. And then Zach showed up and I realized, oh, it actually only takes like one person. It takes one person to make you feel like you're going to be okay. And that was Zach for me. And yeah, it totally changed my life.
So we do indeed have some second, third, fourth, fifth graders who listen to our podcast, which is awesome. But for the most part, man, it is their parents, it is teachers, it is grandparents, it's aunts and uncles, it's professional leaders. And they and we are dealing with this epidemic of loneliness. So the crisis you faced in K1, 2, third grade until Zach shows up is one that many of us are dealing with, surrounded by, in finger quotes, friends right now. It's shifting gears a little bit from being a little kid into being the adult you are, or at least pretend to be. What's the encouragement you would give to someone right now listening to our conversation and they feel today like you felt in third grade? They feel today like the world would be better off without them. They feel today right now that there's no one really out there for them.
Man, I would just say that feelings are very compelling things, but they also are not always or even often based in the truth. And I think you have to learn to question your own feelings, and that's really hard to do when you're a kid. But as an adult, you can go, you know what, is this true? The whole foundation of cognitive behavioral therapy, it's just a lot of fancy words for like, just ask yourself questions about the thoughts that you have and go,
Right.
is this true? Is this real? And a lot of times you realize, okay, no, I'm really blowing this thing out of proportion. I've had a bad day or I've had a bad week. Or Austin Kleon, who's a writer that I really respect, he talks about creativity and he says, when my kids were young and they were throwing a fit, I would ask them, like, have you had water recently? Did you eat? Do you need to take a nap? And he goes, and as the older I get, the more I realize, like, I need to ask myself those questions too. And so I think sometimes when you're like in a dark spot for a minute, like, ask yourself those questions and go, like, okay, is this really true?
Right.
Is the world as bad as I think, or have I just kind of like had a string of bad luck? And if you have, then it's like, well, work your way out of that, figure it out. Now, if you are in a serious depression, I think you should get professional help for that. And there are things that I'm not qualified to talk about there. But I think that, yeah, there are plenty of times when you're going to feel like the world is really awful, or there's other times you're going to feel like everything's amazing and nothing's going to happen that's ever bad for me. And neither of those things are true. And we live kind of in the tension of that. And then the thing that I always tell people is don't focus on like trying to find a friend, focus on trying to be a friend. Focus on
Yeah.
people that like you can connect with and see other people who need, because what you find is that often like when you give that away, when you go serve someone else, like that ends up filling your tank. And it's very kind of counterintuitive, but I found that when I'm in a bad place and I'm like, you know what, I'm just going to go talk to this person who's sitting by themselves, or I'm going to call my friend and who I haven't talked to in a while and just ask him how he's doing. Like that's where those connections happen, because oftentimes other people also are feeling alone and they don't feel like they want to reach out. And so somebody has to make that first step.
That's so well said. So you find the friend, you become a friend, you two move forward together, and you start influencing more lives. And popularity is a dangerous thing to pursue, but one way to judge popularity is in high school, who's at the cool table, man. And you may not have felt like you were the cool table, but you become class president, you become president of the entire high school, and you become a business owner in high school.
Yeah.
Would you talk about becoming this fledgling entrepreneur way back in high school?
Yeah, so my senior year of high school, I was student body president, and some kids like get out at noon, but I just took a full class schedule, and I'm applying to colleges and I'm studying for the ACT. And my parents didn't ever really have a lot of money, so it was kind of like, hey, if you want spending cash, go get a job. And I just didn't have any window of time where I could get a job. Like I would apply to jobs, and they're like, hey, we see you have like 30 minutes of time one day a week that you could work here. That's not really ideal for us. So I just began like trying to figure out ways that I could make money. And there was this business I followed online where this guy designed these vintage t-shirts and sold them. And I had no money to buy these shirts, but I thought they were so cool. And I was like, oh, if he could do that. And I read some articles and interviews with him. And I was like, maybe I could try that. So I designed a t-shirt on a borrowed laptop. A buddy of mine had a copy of Adobe Illustrator and I had no idea how to use it, but I just started messing around and And I made this, my first t-shirt was this really poorly done drawing of like an old woman walking bent over with a cane. And it just said osteoporosis is bad to the bone. And I printed that out in the school's computer lab. I didn't, I didn't have a printer that I could use. So that was a cost savings measure. And then I just started going around in the lunchroom asking if anybody wanted to buy these shirts. And I didn't know how much the shirts cost. I didn't know how long it took to make them. I just was like, hey, give me like 15 bucks and I'll give you a t-shirt in a couple weeks. And I sold enough of those. Like people gave me money and I had this handwritten order sheet and I sold enough t-shirts and I used the money from that to kind of keep building this collection of shirts out. At one point, I got called down to the principal's office and I was told, Kyle, you can't run a business on school grounds. And so I just asked him, where do school grounds end? And he's like, the edge of the parking lot, I guess. And so from then on, if somebody wanted to buy a t-shirt, we'd meet up in the parking lot after school. We'd walk into the street. It was this little farm road off the parking lot and swap money and a shirt. And he told me one time, he goes, as long as you don't get hit by a car, it's okay by me. So that became like the beginning of this little entrepreneurial journey of me selling t-shirts out of the trunk of my car. And then I graduate high school and figure out, oh man, I don't have any customers anymore. I can't go. That was my entire customer base. And so I decided to pursue retail. And I had, again, no idea what I was doing. But there was this one store, Urban Outfitters, that I was like, this is where all the cool kids shop. This is where I should pursue. And I called them and tried to email them, and they were just basically like, hey, if you don't have a contact here, we can't talk to you. But I had their address, and so I thought, man, if you sent them something cool enough, they'll probably end up opening it just out of curiosity. So I got this old vintage suitcase from a garage sale. My grandma was always going to garage sales, and I was like, find me a cool suitcase. So she found this really old, like yellow and brown, looked like a traveling salesman's case, and leather on the sides and stuff. It was all the what is it, like silk lining was like falling out. So I ripped it all out and I reupholstered the inside myself, which is like hot glue and whatever I could find. And then I put all my best-selling t-shirts in there, and I put on top of it all, I put a folded pair of corduroy Levi's, like these vintage jeans. And when you opened that up, it was actually a book. I had cut and sewed this whole thing into a book, and it had a catalog with all of our designs and pricing and contact information, the company story, and all this stuff. And I mailed this off to Philadelphia. And they called me and they were like, hey, we would like to carry your shirts in our stores. And wow. So I was like 18, maybe.
There's about 1 million lessons within that story that need a little bit of explanation. And we won't unpack all of them, but a couple of them. The first is boldness. Like most people, when they graduate high school, duck their head down and follow the leaders in front of them. You just kind of get in line and move because that's the direction everybody else is going. And you look up, you recognize there's an opportunity, and you recognize this is where Urban Outfitters is. That's their headquarters. They won't take my call. So I'll have my grandmother find an old suitcase and I'll make them take a call. Talk about audacity. Talk about boldness.
Yeah, over time, I've done a lot of creative work, and I'm sure we'll talk about that. And one of the things that people always ask is like, oh, where do you get your ideas? And I always say, like, the ideas are the easy part. The thing that I think that I have that for whatever reason, other people struggle with is that if I have an idea, I'm usually going to try it. Like a good enough percentage of my ideas. And I don't feel bold. I don't feel audacious. I just feel like, I want to try this. I want to see what's going to happen. And what's the worst that can happen? They're going to tell me no. They already told me no. So I'm out $50 for this suitcase and, the t-shirts and the shipping. I'm like, well, that seems like a reasonable swing to take. And so I don't know what it is inside of me. I think also I kind of like thinking about like, well, will this make a good story later? If so, then I'll try it. Even if it fails, I could, tell my kids, hey, I tried. And I just seen a lot of that like in adults in my life when I was in middle school and high school and stuff, talking about like things that they like, oh yeah, I was going to do this, or I was going to try stand-up comedy when I was younger, or then I was going to do this, but then it was sort of like the world just wore them down, or they found reasons not to. And I think I just saw that like freight train of the quote unquote real world coming at me. I'm 18, and all of a sudden every conversation you're having with an adult is about like, where are you going to go and what are you going to major in and how are you going to pay for it? And I just felt like, man, this is like the clock is ticking on the freedom that I have to do these things. And so I'm just going to try it. And then I think once that went well, they said, we'd love to carry these shirts, and it became distributed all across America. And they had one store in Toronto. So I make the joke that I would tell people I was an international fashion designer. But once that happened, I think that just showed me like, Oh man, there's not really any rules here. There's because they had told me like we don't take unsolicited packages and you can't come in without a contact and all this stuff. And I sort of realized like there's the way that the world is supposed to work or that people tell you the world works, and then there's the way it actually works. And that's really all that matters is figuring that part out because this other stuff is it's just sort of a story that people make up and you can make up your own story.
So audacity is one part of that story. Another is the intentionality of creating something that is impossible to ignore. You can't ignore a suitcase showing up from Southwest Missouri with this storyboard inside of it, with the corduroys and everything else that you have as part of the package. When did you begin to develop this idea of real thoughtful intentionality on how to present things that are unavoidably attractive, even if
I
they
don't.
repulse, but like they draw you into the story?
Yeah, I don't know. My dad was always really creative. My dad would not tell you that he is creative or an artist at all. But like when we were kids, for Valentine's Day at our school, everyone would make Valentine's Day boxes. And I remember coming to my dad with these like very crazy, audacious ideas, and he would never say no. I would be like, "Oh, I want a working helicopter. You know, I want it to have a blade that spins around." And he would go, "Okay, let's figure it out." And we would go to like the dollar store and just find whatever we could. And he'd be like, "Oh, there's a motor in this little $1 fan. Like we can use that, and we'll hack stuff together." And to this day, that was 30 years ago. And I have friends that from elementary, middle school who are like, you always had the best Valentine's Day boxes. And I remember this one time I said, Dad, I want a beehive and I want it to say, be my Valentine. And I want there to be bees flying around it. And he figured it out. And he made like these little wires and the top of the beehive spun around and you couldn't see it. And kids would come from other classes. Like the teachers would be like, all these other kids they have to see this. I never connected those dots until right now. But I think stuff like that where I would go, Dad, we should do this. And he wouldn't go, no, that sounds like a lot of work. Just glue some cardboard together or whatever. He would be like, oh yeah, let's figure it out together. So I think I just realized that like everything's figure outable. And then also that like, yeah, the spectacle of making something really cool. I always liked that. I like when you make something surprising for people. That's like a gift that you're giving them and their eyes light up. And so that becomes like a superpower. It's like, well, why wouldn't you do that all the time? Make the most surprising thing that you can. Everybody else is going to send an email. It's like, how do you cut the line? Well, just send them a suitcase full of stuff and they'll be intrigued.
You and I shared the stage at a relatively large conference. We won't go bragging right now, but it was a pretty big event. And one of the quotes that I wrote down from your keynote was this. Now we're going to shift gears a little bit. If you want conventional results, conventional ideas will get you there. But if you want crazy results, you've got to embrace crazy ideas. So let's
Yeah.
talk about some. You got too many to talk about all of them. So let's just talk about a few of your crazy ideas. I'm going to go back to 1999. I don't know what you were doing, but I was hanging out downtown St. Louis because the following day, my St. Louis Rams, that's right, they used to be in St. Louis, were going to play a team the following day from Minnesota. That team wore purple. They came in town. We wanted to beat them. So the night before we played them, the night before we beat down Jeff George, we as a community came together on the slopes of the Mississippi, and we had what is called a Viking funeral. It's the very first time I've ever heard of a Viking funeral, and it was the last time I heard of a Viking funeral until I bumped into you, Kyle. So that's my experience with a Viking funeral downtown on the Mississippi in the shadows of the arch. Tell the story of your Viking funeral.
I've done two Viking funerals now, and the first one started 9 years ago. And I was about to turn 30. I was 29 years old. I wanted to do something fun for my 30th birthday. And my parents had, now we have some property out in the country, but at the time we lived in town and my parents had some property and they said, hey, you should have your friends over and have a bonfire or something and have a little party. And I was like, yeah, I've done so many bonfires in my life. I worked at a summer camp. I'm like, that's not cool enough. Like this is my 30th birthday. So I started trying to think of like, what's something that I could build and burn. And I went through all these different ideas. And one of them, I had made this giant Abraham Lincoln mask for a parade that I was in. And so I was like, well, I know the structure of Abraham Lincoln's head. Like, could I make a giant Abraham Lincoln head for whatever reason? And then I was like, well, I think people would find that disrespectful if I'm burning Abraham Lincoln's head for my
I'm
birthday.
glad you went in a different direction, man. We would not be having the conversation right now if you
And
burned
so
Lincoln.
I was texting a friend about this. I was like, how do we, is there a way to do this respectful? And he goes, yeah, it's less burning an effigy and more Viking funeral. And I was like, oh man, Viking funeral, that's a pretty good idea. So I was like, oh, maybe I could build a big Viking ship and have a Viking funeral for my 20s to like let go of my 20s. And so I just kind of went all in. I remember pitching my wife this idea, and I was like, it's going to cost a little bit of money. I'm going to have to buy all this cardboard, and it's going to like I'm basically going to have to work on this nonstop for 2 weeks to get it ready. And my wife said, I think it's cute that you're asking me about this. And I was like, why do you think it's cute? And she goes, because I can tell like you're going to do it either way. Like I know you enough to know like there are some ideas that like I could say no to. And there's other ideas that like you're just going to keep asking about it until it. And I was like, no, no, no. If you say no, I won't do it. And she's like, I think it's adorable that you believe that, but you're going to do it. So I spent like 2 weeks or so just, I mean, working around the clock, building this. It was 8 feet tall, it was 16 feet long. It was like basically the size of like a large van. And it had just like very ornate, like all these handmade scales and detailing and spikes. And then I built these huge letters that said my 20s. And then I put it out into a field and invited all my friends over. We couldn't figure out how to do like flaming arrows. So we bought a bunch of Roman candles and like filled it up with gas and kerosene and then shot Roman candles at it and set it on fire. And I thought that was going to be the end of it. I had done a lot of dumb, weird projects over my life. But some friends of mine who are videographers made a short little film about it, like 3 minutes long or something. And they documented me making it and then burning it. And then they did an interview with me where I'm talking about it. And they asked me something about like, are you going to be sad to burn this after you've worked so hard on this thing? And I was like, no, you got to let go of the past to make room for new things in the future. And it was just kind of this throwaway line. But they made that line kind of shine during this video. And so I started getting emails from people, and this video started doing numbers online. And they would say, man, I was really inspired by your weird birthday party for some reason. And they would kind of all say the same thing, which was like, I've got some stuff I want to let go of. I just wish I could do it with a cool Viking funeral. So, I get one of those emails and I'm like, oh, that's kind of nice. And then I get two of those emails, and then I get a dozen of those emails. And it's like a year later, and I'm turning 31 now, and I'm still getting emails from people about this project I did. And so I was like, man, there's something about this. Like people want to have a Viking funeral for stuff they want to let go of. So I was like, we'll do one more. And I asked people, I said, send me your regrets. Send me anything you want to let go of. It could be a mistake that you made or a relationship you want to let go of or a belief that you have that you don't want to have anymore. Just write that down on a note card and send it to me. And then I'll build another Viking ship and burn it. My goal was to collect 10,000 regrets. I ended up collecting 21,000 regrets from people all over the world in multiple languages. And then I built a much bigger ship. So the second ship was 16 feet tall and it was 30 feet long. And I thought it would take a year. It took 2.5 years. I mean, it was this whole journey. And then,
by the way, Kyle, you're underselling how majestic and gorgeous this thing is. I'm still repulsed with the fact that you burned this piece of art. It's stunning. I mean, I've been all over it. It's a stunning boat that you built. So going back a little bit, you have this audacious goal of collecting 10,000 regrets, which is already obnoxious because it will never happen. And you more than 2x that. Would you share some of the regrets that you were receiving from people?
Oh man, they were all over the place. Some of them, like sometimes it would be an individual, like just one word written on a card. And then sometimes it would be like front and back, like the tiniest text that you've ever seen scrolled out. I wrote a whole book about this, and I sort of broke it down into like there's these 5 different types of regrets that came in. Everything fell into one of those buckets. And those were beliefs, relationships, identities, experiences, and fears. And so, I actually flipped that backwards in the book for reasons I'll get to in a second. But, I talk about fears. There's things that people want to let go of. I'm afraid of this thing, and I realize that I shouldn't be afraid of it, or I don't want to be afraid of it. Experiences are just like, hey, this thing happened to me and I'm still carrying it around and I don't want to be carrying it around. Or also, this thing didn't happen to me and I wanted it to, and I'm still kind of living in that regret. Identities are, hey, I think this about myself and I carry this around and I don't want to think that about myself, or I don't want to let that be like the limitation of who I can be in the world. And then relationships, there's a lot of stuff about I hurt this person or this person hurt me. I mean, so much of our lives is relational and it's connected to other people. And then the final one is beliefs. And the reason I wrote the book backwards is because beliefs are really the only one that you can do anything about. Like relationships involve other people, which means that like you can do whatever you can on your end, but ultimately, fundamentally, like if that other person doesn't want to resolve or doesn't want to get back together or whatever that is, that's kind of up to them. identities. There's a lot of stuff in there that has it related to how other people see you, experiences like that. You can't change the past. It either happened or it didn't happen. And fears, like really, the thing that you can change is a belief about a thing. Like, how do I choose to think about this thing? What do I believe about this experience that is causing me to continue to live in that? What do I believe that this fear says about me? Or what do I believe about this relationship? Really, ultimately, like it all comes down to how do I change my beliefs about this thing so that I can move on from that and live the life that I'm supposed to live.
I mean, you're an artist and you help people online discover the beauty of their lives by creating art for them. So it's playful. Sometimes it's not so playful. I mean, it's you do some wild things virtually, but you also know by doing that work online that you can't plan virality. Like some things
Yeah.
go, most things don't. You can't plan for 21,000 people to email, text, and mail you regrets. That's audacious. So I'm curious, as a man who has his ears close to the ground and close to the heartbeat of people who are out there walking around among us, what do you think it is about regrets that had people sit up and say, man, I've got to burn this part of my life. Got to let this thing go. What is it about those regrets that had us take action and send them to you?
It's interesting because I thought, well, people will do this because I asked them to, and it's a nice thing, and it's sort of this symbolic thing, and but I didn't personally think like, oh, anything like burning it, it doesn't actually do anything. It's a symbolic gesture. But I had so many people, like it took 2.5 years to burn this ship, and so there were some people who had sent their regrets in at the very beginning of the project. And when I finally burned it, I live streamed it on Instagram, and I was burning the ship, so I didn't watch it, but I recorded the whole thing. And later I went back and watched it, and there were tons of people who were commenting the whole time saying like, I've been waiting for this moment for 2 years. I've been waiting for this moment for a year since I wrote this down. And that like something about writing this thing down on a card and then actually watching that burn did feel like it gave them some sort of a release of like, okay, this thing is like, there's something about this kind of ritual and ceremony and having a physical representation of something. And I think that that feels good. I think also just sometimes writing something down, it takes it out of your head and it puts it into reality. And then you realize like, oh, it's just, these are just words. This is just a paper, this doesn't have power over me like I thought it did. So yeah, I don't know. But I mean, I had no idea that I would ever get 20,000, 21,000 regrets. I remember like a few weeks before I was at like 15, 16, 17,000 or something like that. And I knew what the pace was of them coming in. And so I kind of thought, okay, I'll probably get a couple hundred more. And then I had a friend challenge me and she was like, you're going to get 20,000. And I was like, I'm not, I can see where this is going. I'm not going to get 20,000. She was like, you absolutely could do it. And something about her believing in me going, this is possible. I was like, maybe I could. And so I actually made this little cardboard thing on the wall, and it had, it was like a old timey like store sign. It had peel off letters or numbers. And so it said days until the ship burns. And I would change it every day. And then underneath it said regrets collected. And I would update the number every day. And then I would post that picture on social media and go, oh, I'm at 15, I'm at 17,000. And all of a sudden it was like that, awesome. Just doing that, giving people a common goal. I ended up blowing past the goal by 1,000, and I never thought I would get anywhere near there.
So on our podcast, we've had on Olympians, we've had on sport broadcasters, we've had on Hall of Famers, we've had on people who run marathons and super marathons and Ironmans and everything else. And yet I'll tell you this, when I see a guy or a lady driving a car with 0.0, those are my people. Those are the brothers and sisters that I love and respect, the folks that have chosen loudly through their lives not to run the marathon, which leads us now to you running your fake marathon. So I'm not going to have you unpack the entire story, though it is a beautiful one. Why did you choose to run a fake marathon?
I mean, really, the inspiration is just my buddy Grant got into running marathons, and some, not all marathon, although I would say a large percentage of them, they get obnoxious about it, and he kind of got obnoxious about it, where he'd be like, dude, when are you going to do it? And, you got to run a marathon, and it's so much fun and all this stuff. And so I just sort of jokingly was like, I'm just going to say that I've run a marathon, because he said, it's so cool to be able to say that you've done it. And so I was like, well, then I'll just say that I've done it. And he was like, well, no one's going to believe you. And so I don't know. There was just something about it. Like I love I love messing with my friends. I love taking a joke too far. And he said no one will believe you, and I kind of took that as a challenge of like, could I get people to believe me that I've run a marathon? And I started mentioning this idea to friends. I was like, what if we put together a fake marathon where we make race t-shirts and bibs and medals, and we all go outside and take a picture of ourselves pretending to run, and that's it. Like that's kind of the whole idea. We put it up on Kickstarter. We were trying to raise like $1,000, and we ended up raising $23,000. It was sponsored by Groupon. It was in Runner's World magazine. I mean, it was a huge deal, and it just became this moment of like kind of just ridiculous joy where people went out and they were setting up aid stations and fake signs and stuff and having their kids cheer for them. And I mean, I've that happened. The first one was in 2012, and so 13 years ago, and I've had friends they were like, man, my kids still talk about that. Like their kids were little at the time, their kids are grown up now, and they were like, yeah, I remember that thing that we did where we faked a marathon. And so yeah, I've done it since then. And the last time we did it was during the pandemic, and we got 34,000 people to sign up, and it became this huge thing. And people around the world did it. And we had people with pictures of our bibs like under the Eiffel Tower and in front of Big Ben and the Golden Gate Bridge and Gyeongbokgung Palace, and so, yeah, it was just this silly moment of joy, and it was kind of a ridiculous idea. But I found that when you give somebody like permission to be creative and kind of a thing to aim that at, they surprise you and they bring ideas out of the woodwork that you never would have expected.
And if it was only about numbers or revenue or ego or followers, to be honest with you, I don't think I'd have you on our show because a lot of folks are chasing that. You're chasing joy and you're chasing elevating the lives of the ones in front of you, one at a time, at scale. There's a picture you shared when you and I were together in Dallas of the fake marathon, 34,000 fake runners and all the fake bibs and everything else. But there's a picture of a little guy, bald, with this big, goofy grin on his face. And dude,
Yeah.
even in asking the question, like it gets me emotional thinking about it. Talk about that.
Yeah, it was a video of a mom and two little kids, and they posted a ton of videos that day. All day long, they posted stuff. And in the highlight reel, I used one of their clips, and it's a mom and two kids, and they're standing in their living room. They've got race bibs on, they've got race t-shirts on, and we didn't really sell like kid-sized t-shirts, and so like they're way too big for these kids, and they've got like they put on headbands and wristbands. I mean, they're just like kitted out for this fake marathon. And in this one little clip, they're standing in their living room and they're just kind of like running in place. And you can tell they are just like, they're giggling, they're like ear to ear grins, they're just having this fun moment as a family. But yeah, the kid on the right in that video is bald. And the mom sent me a message afterwards and she said, Kyle, like every day I'm a mom of a kid with leukemia, and that's a pretty tough gig. Like nobody tells you how to do it and you're pretty sure you're doing it wrong. You got to act like you're strong and you're not strong. You got to act like everything's going to be okay and you don't know if it's going to be okay. And she said, it's really hard. And she said, every day I'm a mom of a kid with leukemia, but today I just got to be a mom. And I tell that story because I didn't set out to do that. I wasn't like, oh, I'm going to impact people who, are in difficult situations. I literally made this whole thing up to mess with my buddy. But the thing is, when you put these crazy ideas out into the world, you have no idea where they're going to go. It's like this rock that you throw into a pond and it sends these ripples out, and it often impacts people that you wouldn't have expected. It impacts people that in ways that you wouldn't have expected. You're like, oh, that story connected with you? Like of all the things, that's why I'm so passionate about. That's why I travel around talking about chasing crazy ideas, is because I want to see what happens when people put their ideas out into the world. I think too many people let those things die inside of them, and they think that the only cost is to them. They think, oh, well, I didn't get to try stand-up comedy. I didn't get to write my book. I didn't get to go on this trip, but that's okay. I'm okay with that. And I go, no, but that's not, you're stealing from all of us. Like we all want to see what happens when you put this thing out into the world. And so like, that's why I'm kind of this like Johnny Appleseed of creativity going around trying to just plant little seeds everywhere and encourage people like, hey, you have something inside of you. You have no idea what it could become, but you also have no idea who it could impact. And so you owe it to all of us to try it, to give it a shot.
Man, you're so public facing. And you have people like O'Leary and others who are lifting you up and celebrating you and saying, come on, Kyle, show us the next thing, man. We're cheering you forward. And in doing a little bit of research around you, you have naysayers. You have absolute haters. You have folks who are throwing darts at you. For you, Kyle, with people out, when you're so public facing and you do face some animosity out there in the marketplace, because that's what happens when you shine a bright light on life. you also cast a bit of a shadow, and that's what people are going to focus on. What keeps you going and say, man, I'm just not going to pay attention to that. I'm going to keep doing the work and keep casting that rock and keep making these ripples.
Yeah, it's tough. I mean, I had an experience a couple years ago where I had a brand deal as an influencer that went really, really great, and then it went really, really bad. And I didn't really know what I was doing, and I made some mistakes in that. But it became like there's this tweet that I think about a lot where somebody said, every day on the internet, there's one main character, and your goal every day is to not be that main character. And it seems like every so often we pick some random person and we're like, we all hate this person today because of this thing that they did. And sometimes it's somewhat justified. Sometimes they did something, but oftentimes as soon as we do that, we just go, it's all now fair game to just tear that person to shreds. And so
Yes.
for a while, I was that person where yes, I made some mistakes in this process, but what happened was everyone then assumed everything that I did was wrong, and all my motives were wrong, and they went way beyond that. And then it just became like it's okay to bully this person, and it was hard. I mean, I'll be honest, it was really rough. I think what kept me going was knowing that like none of these people really knew me. They knew this tiny fraction of my life from this video they had seen on the internet, and oftentimes it was people who hadn't actually seen any of the stuff that everyone was talking about. They had seen other people talking about other people talking about the thing. And what I realized is like, man, all the people who know me in my life, they love me, they trust me, they believe in me. Like all of my friends, their kids love me because I'm a goofy guy that plays with them. Like their families love me. And so I was like, okay, people who don't really know anything about me have this opinion of me. What about the people who know me closest? Are any of those people concerned about me or my ethics or my morals or any of that? And no, that none of them were. None of them cared. And so I was like, okay, like I think that's kind of what helped me to keep going. And it also helped me to have empathy for other people who, I see this kind of stuff happen. When that whole situation happened to me, one of the coolest things that happened was a guy reached out to me, sent me a DM, and he said, hey, I went through this exact experience a year ago. If you want to talk, I'll tell you exactly what's going to happen. Like I'll walk you through this. And I was like, man, he didn't have to do that. And I think that there's something about like going through an experience that makes you have empathy for other people who go through that experience. I think I've just realized that that's kind of part of the game. Like if you are a public facing figure, there are going to be people that hate you just because of that. And there's something that happens too, where like when people like you for a while, and then if you get too popular, there are lots of people who hate Taylor Swift just because she's very popular. And because so many people like her, any tiny little nick in the armor that they can find, they're like, well, now I hate her, or I hate her because other people like her. So it's just sort of, I've realized like that's the table stakes. That's the cost of doing business. If you want to be a person who is public facing, then you're going to have people who don't like you. There are going to be people who watch your speech and go, oh, I don't like this thing or this, whatever. And anytime you get up in front of people, there's always going to be that. And I just kind of realized like, well, I want to do this thing. I want to be out in the world. I want to try to make an impact. And if there was a way to do it without accumulating people that don't like you, well, I'd love to do that. But I don't know what that is. And so if this is kind of the ticket price, then I guess I'll just pay it.
Thank you. Well said. You also have a whole bunch of quotes that I wrote down that I want to ask you about. And as I do this, tell me in different words what you're saying to me. They're pretty obvious, man, but I love them. So here we go. Number one, if you look at the world and you're not happy with it, then that's on you. How do we change this? How do we build the world that we actually want to live in?
Steve Jobs had this quote where he said that one of the big moments for him was when he realized that everything around him was created by people who weren't smarter than him. Like I'm looking at my office right now, the town square of Springfield, Missouri. Like the whole town is built around this one nexus. But if you think about it, it's not like it was divinely ordained that somebody just decided the square should be here. It's 200 years ago or whatever. Somebody was like, this is where it should be. And everything got built out around that. Somebody decided that this office should be laid out like this. Somebody decided the road should be where it is. You can decide it should be a different way. And I think oftentimes because so much of the world is dictated to us, and we're like, oh, this is where you go. This is how you like. We think that we have to do everything the way that everyone else does it. But you realize, oh, you know what? Actually, what moves us forward is people who see the way that the world is, and then they see a vision for how it could be better. And they don't just like bury that away, but they're like, you know what? Why couldn't it be like this? The reason that we have any of the stuff that we have right now is because somebody was like, Yeah, I don't want to ride a horse every day. I don't want to ride a car that doesn't have windshield wipers. I don't want to ride a car without seatbelts. I don't want to like anything. It all starts out as a crazy idea. My wife and I've talked about this a lot. Like, I don't have any problem with people who are not ambitious. If somebody is, I think there's something really beautiful about a person who just lives a quiet life and enjoys that and is a part of their community. What I do have a problem with is people who are not content with their life, but also are not doing anything to change that. So people who are like complain about the world, but then they don't do anything to make that better or to try to affect change or any of that stuff. And I'm like, okay, pick one. Either be content with the life that you have, that's what your actions are saying, or your mouth is saying you're not content with it, but you need to line those things up. So that's kind of what both of those quotes are trying to say.
You spoke to this earlier, but I'm going to have you speak to it again. Ideas are not for you. They are ultimately for those you serve.
One of the things that I say about chasing crazy ideas is that it expands your window of possibility. Like anytime I go into something, I'm like, okay, like best case scenario is here, worst case scenario is here. And it almost never lands inside of that window. It's always like, oh, this is a way bigger success than I ever could have dreamed, or it's a way bigger failure than I ever could have imagined, or it's just kind of it lands in a spot that I couldn't really graph on that chart. And so I think that that ideas are these powerful things and you never really know where they're going to go. And it's very, very unlikely that an idea only impacts you. Even I mean, we talked about some of my more meaningful stuff today, but so much of the stuff that I share on the internet is just ridiculous. And 2 weekends ago, I turned 39. I had this birthday party, and the whole premise of the party was I found this giant rock in a hillside. And I was like, I'm going to invite, it was 4 feet wide, and I had no idea how deep it went. And I sent all my friends this invite that said, Rockfest 2025, everyone's coming over. We're going to dig this rock out of the ground, but we can't use shovels and we can't use the tractor. We're just going to get sticks and rocks out of the woods. And I made worksheets for people to make a prediction about what the shape of the rock was. And I had a rock themed playlist with I want a rock and I am a rock and like a Rolling Stone. And I made t-shirts for everybody. On the front in Latin, it says, I came, I saw, I dug. And on the back, it said, fortune favors the bold, gravity favors the boulder. And I just I went all out. It was just this stupid party. And I made a video about it, and 800,000 people have watched that video on Instagram. And so many of the comments are just people going, I wish I had a community like this. I long for things like this. And Priya Parker, who's this really influential writer who talks about community, so many people tagged her in the comments that her team reached out and they were like, can we repost this video? Because this is what it's all about. And so that is exactly what this idea is. It's I thought I want to do this thing to make a fun memory for my friends. And I had no idea that what it would become is inspiration for other people to go make memories for their friends, or that my idea would become a permission slip for other people. And sometimes other people just need to see you do something and they go, oh, that's a possibility. Oh, I can do that too. And so that's what that whole idea is about.
Final quote, and then we'll shift into what we call the Live Inspired 7. But here's the final quote. Regret, and this one surprised me when I first read it. Regret is a sign of progress. If you look back at your past self and you see a fool, congratulations, you've grown.
Yeah. I mean, I think that that's true. It's people talk about wanting to live a life with no regrets. And I think that there's only two kinds of people who have life with no regrets. And the first are sociopaths. And the second are liars. That's it. You can't live a life with no regret because you're going to have made no mistakes. Or I guess the third would be people who've just never done anything. And you've never tried anything. You've never taken any risks. But I think that those people are going to regret doing that.
Right.
Yeah. And so if you look back on your life and you're you cringe at things that you did or you've made mistakes, the question should be would I do that today? No, I wouldn't because I learned from that. Great. That means that you made progress. That was the lesson that you learned. Right. I don't look back at my third grade homework and be like, oh my gosh, this kid couldn't do long division. What an idiot. I'm no, that's why he failed at that thing so that he could keep getting better so that now I can do long division, which I never do. But, we look back at ourselves and it's so easy to kind of criticize yourself. But instead you should go, man, look how far I've come. Look how far I was back there and now I'm here. That's a sign that I'm growing.
Kyle Scheele, this has been awesome. We are ready to step off the stage though, but before I let us do that and go back to work, 7 questions that tether all of our guests together. They're called the Live Inspired 7. So get your cardboard ready, man. Let's go to work. Question number 1, what's been the most impactful book you've ever read?
Oh man, I don't know how to answer that question. I read so many books; it changes all the time. I typically like it's whatever book I'm reading right now.
How about that? What's
Right,
right now?
a
What's the
book
most impactful book you're
a
either
book I'm
reading?
reading right now that I'm finding really impactful is called Things Become Other Things. It's by this guy named Craig Maud, who he's an American guy, but he's lived in Japan for a long, long time, and he takes these really long walks and just walks through the Japanese countryside. He takes beautiful pictures. And this book is him writing to his childhood best friend, who's named Brian. And I've listened to podcasts, so I haven't gotten to this part in the book, but I know that his best friend actually died when they were kids, and that Craig basically like got an opportunity to go to this better school, and this guy didn't, and they had been best friends, and because of that, like that their lives went in very different directions. And so this is him walking through Japan and explaining this to his friend and writing these letters about how these little decisions in life change and turn into these other things. And it's beautiful and it's heart wrenching and silly and fun and all of those things. So I'm really enjoying that one.
What's one positive characteristic or one trait that you possessed as a little boy that you wish you exhibited as brilliantly today as a man?
Oh man, I still feel like I have curiosity and all of that stuff, but I think that as you just lose some of that over time, like you naturally kind of shrink a little bit. So I'm always wishing like, oh man, I wish I was like as bold and as audacious and as curious as I was back then. Especially when it comes to like, as a kid you make friends so easily, and as an adult you have to push through that and go like, oh, I'm gonna go say hi to this person even though it feels awkward. As kids, you're just like, hey, we both like bubblegum. You want to be best friends? I miss some of that, but that's like a thing that I still actively hold on to and try to, aim for.
If your home caught fire and all living things, your bride, your four babies, any animals are outside safely, and you have an opportunity of running in and grabbing one item, what's that one physical thing, Kyle, you'd come racing back outside with?
I was gonna say like my laptop because everything's on it, but everything's backed up in Dropbox, and so I don't really have anything. I mean, I'm sure that I would grab something, but it's all replaceable to me. I mean, there's this quote. I think it was Thomas Edison. Like when he was an older guy, and his whole factory burned down, and everybody's like, "Oh, he's going to be devastated." And he got all of his kids, and he was like, "Guys, come watch this fire. You're never going to get to see anything like this ever again." And I just think like that's such a beautiful way to look at it. It's like I have lots of cool stuff that I like, but even like this whole wall of stuff, I just hung this back up. All of these, like for people who are listening, I have all this very chaotic art wall behind me. And the guy that hung it up, he was like, "Well, we're just using this like double-sided tape. Are you worried about it damaging the stuff when you take it down?" And I was like, "No, I kind of hope it does damage it because then I'll go find new stuff to put up." Like, and so I don't know. I don't have any individual possessions that I'm like, "Oh, I would need this one thing." I heard someone say one time that nothing that you own is less than, 100 years from a landfill. So it's all going there one way or another. There's stuff that I have for my family, but, hey, if the fire comes, the fire comes. So,
If you could sit on a bench on a gorgeous Springfield day and have a long conversation with anyone living or deceased, who do you want next to you?
man, that's tough. There's so many people. I think this seems weird after what I said earlier, but I've really been fascinated by Abraham Lincoln for a long time.
Dude,
I
wait
went
until you
to
find out you try to burn them in effigy. I mean, this is not
But he
a
also
different
realizes
guy.
I rode around on a penny farthing wearing a giant mask of him. So I think that he'll.
I saw that and
No,
wiped
I
out.
and I wiped out. Yeah. Man, you did your homework. Yeah, I went to the Abraham Lincoln Presidential Museum in Springfield, Illinois, and I've never been like a big presidential museum guy. But my uncle, who was also not a big museum guy, he had taken his son on a field trip there. He's like, Kyle, you have to go. And I was like, oh my gosh, like it's just incredible, like who he was and what he did, and especially like when you look at how divided our country has become now. Like the book about Abraham Lincoln's politics is called Team of Rivals, and like he put together people who had vastly different beliefs from him because he was like, I think that that's how you get good ideas out of people. And he also like struggled with depression and he lost a kid. And I think just to like watch what that man was able to accomplish and become in the midst of all that, I think it would be really, really interesting. And then also, we don't know what Abraham Lincoln's voice sounded like because we didn't have recording technology back then. And so I think it would be really interesting to see like what he sounded like because there are some people who said he had a really high voice. And I think it would be just probably jarring.
I sure hope they're wrong, man. I have Lincoln's voice so clearly in my mind. And if it turns out when I shake his hand later on in life and he says, hi, I'm Abe. Oh, dude, you are not Abraham Lincoln. You're Kyle in disguise again. All right, dude. So what's the best advice Lincoln or some art teacher, your wife, a child, some other mentor ever gave you? So the best advice you've ever received is,
Oh man, the best advice I've ever received. I mean, this is so cliche, but it's so true, which is just like everybody that you meet is going through something that you don't know about. And so like you should just give people grace. I think that it's so easy to be grumpy and mean, and I fall into that all the time to be like, oh, this guy cut me off. But I think there's like a superpower in giving people the benefit of the doubt and go, oh, maybe that guy that cut me off like really has to pee and he's just trying to get to a bathroom, or maybe his wife is about to give birth in the back of the car, or maybe he just didn't see you. That's been really helpful. I think that because that's something that is always true and we always forget about it. So you constantly need to come back to like, hey, other people are going through stuff. The world doesn't revolve around you. It feels like it does because you're in every scene. But for other people, like they've got their own stuff. And so just give them grace.
so the last week I was driving my daughter to the grade school. A man flicked me off truly for no reason. It was a ridiculous, I did not deserve this one finger salute. And I started getting mad about it while I'm taking her to school. And she said, Dad, I don't think he was giving you that finger. I think he was just waving at you with one finger. He was saying good morning. And she meant it. And I thought, man, what a cool way to go through life. Like just assuming goodwill. Like it makes a ton of sense.
Yeah.
What wisdom would you offer yourself at age 20? So if you could go back in time, just a couple years, 19 years now, and whisper some wisdom your way, what would you say?
I would just say, man, you have no idea what's possible for you. I mean, it's like, and I would also just say enjoy the ride. I just found something the other day where a 17-year-old had reached out to me and said, what wisdom would you give me when you were 17? And I think I was 34 at the time, so I was double his age. And I just said, man, enjoy every moment. Like you're so much of, and this is what I'm constantly telling my son just finished his freshman year of high school. And I said, buddy, you're gonna blink and it's gonna be over. Like enjoy this. When you're having a great day, like just soak that in and remember what that feels like. And when you're having a really bad day and your heart gets broken, like remember what that feels like. You get to feel this broad range of emotions. And I would just say, like, you have no idea what's around the corner. I mean, there were so many times in my life where I thought, it's all over. I have no prospects. I have no hope. This thing fell apart. This thing fell apart. Like, and then around the corner, something happened and some unexpected. And so I think I still, when I think about what's going to happen 10 years from now, I just have started saying, I have no idea. I have no idea, but I'm excited to find out. And so I think I would just tell my 20-year-old self that. And I would also just go, hey, man, I'm proud of you. And just hang in there. You're doing great. It's going to feel hard sometimes, but it's going to be a fun ride.
Kyle Scheele, it has been said that all great people can have their lives summed up in one sentence. How would you like yours to read?
I don't know. I don't know.
By the way, before you answer, that was the most discouraged preparation to answer this question I've received now in 811 conversations. Oh,
Oh, I just feel like life is so rich and varied, and to say, to sum it up in one sentence, I would just say it's been a hell of a ride. I think that's what I would say. I don't know. That's all that comes to mind right now is that it's been a hell of a ride.
Kyle Scheele, it has indeed been a hell of a ride. I loved meeting you in Dallas several weeks ago. I loved learning about your life since then, and I love visiting with you today.
Thank you. It was so great. It was my pleasure. I've heard amazing things about you for so long from so many people in the speaking world, and so it was really great to see you work your magic on stage as well.
My friends, that is the voice and the life story of our friend Kyle Scheele. My name is John O'Leary. Today is our day. What a gift. Don't miss it. Live inspired. My friends, there are so many things that our friend today shared with us to inspire us to live without regrets. One of them was, who were you before the world told you who you were? Who were you as that child? That innately curious, playful, joyful little person running around the world, climbing trees, casting a vision of possibility. Who were you back then? And how do you return to that today? Well, when I thought about creativity and how do you live this out loud through your lives, I thought of a guest we brought on to the show several years ago. I actually was so moved by this individual. I flew out to his hometown of San Diego, California to interview him live. His name is Eric Wall. We had him way back on episode 080. And I'd like you to consider checking out Eric Wall's episode right now. You're going to love it. You can find it at episode 80 Or you could just go on below me right now to johnolearyinspires.com/podcast. And in the show notes, I will have a link taking you directly back to Eric's conversation. My friends, I want to thank you as I do week after week for being part of our Live Inspired community. I want to thank you for being my friend. And I want to thank you for recognizing the foundation is firm. The headwinds may indeed be real, but your life is a gift and the best is yet to come. So for this time and until next time, my name is John O'Leary. Today is your day. What a gift. Live inspired.